This is not a luxury condominium built for the ultra-wealthy. This is public housing built by the government, and this is where 90% of the people in this country live. Every government that ever tried to build public housing for the poor created this. People with nowhere else to go, living where no one else would choose to. But in this country, almost everyone prefers to live in a government flat, because some of these buildings can genuinely be compared to a 5-star hotel. This is Singapore, the country that built public housing and turned it into the most expensive real estate in the nation. So how does a government build housing so desirable that millionaires put their name on the waiting list? How did they turn a welfare program into a wealth-building machine without most people even noticing? And why did the man who built all of this say he didn't do it for housing at all, but for something far more calculated? Pruitt-Igoe, a massive 33-building public housing complex in St. Louis, Missouri, was built in 1954 and celebrated as a modern marvel. By 1972, the government was dynamiting it, demolishing its own housing project because it had become unlivable. Cabrini Green in Chicago, built to house the poor, became one of the most dangerous places in America, eventually demolished. France built towers in rings around its great cities, government housing for workers. Today, those rings are called banlieues. It's where riots happen, where the state has largely given up. Britain built council estates, and the name became an insult. 2 words that told a stranger everything they thought they needed to know about who you were. The Philippines built relocation housing in Bulacan and Cavite for Manila slum dwellers, promising dignity. Without jobs or transport, many returned to the streets. The pattern is identical everywhere. You build housing for the poor move in, the middle class stays away. The building absorbs the identity of the people trapped inside it. And 20 years later, you're either demolishing it or pretending it doesn't exist. Every government watched this happen. Most of them built the same thing anyway. One man decided to build something different. But here is where Singapore's story stops making sense. Because the solution Lee Kuan Yew built wasn't really a housing program. It was a savings machine, disguised as a housing solution. The year was 1960. Singapore had just become self-governing. Lee Kuan Yew looks at the housing crisis and makes a decision that will define the entire country. He creates the Housing Development Board, the HDB, but he gives it a mandate no other public housing agency in the world had ever received. Don't build for the poor, build for everyone. Working class, middle class, professionals, young couples, all eligible. One decision, one sentence. It is the reason Singapore's public housing never became a slum. Because when everyone can live there, no one can look at it and say, that's where the desperate people go. The stigma never had a chance to form. But the HDB was just the building. What LKY built underneath it, that was the real architecture. Every Singaporean citizen has a mandatory savings account. It's called the Central Provident Fund, the CPF. Every month, your employer deposits 17% of your salary into it. You deposit 20% of your own salary into it. You never decide to. You don't get a choice. The government takes it before you see it, and it compounds, quietly, year after year. Now, here is where it becomes something else entirely. When you're ready to buy your HDB flat, you don't go to a bank. You don't take out a mortgage. You don't accumulate debt. You use your CPF. The savings you built automatically across every working year of your life. Those savings buy your home. Think about what just happened there. The government built the flat. You paid for it with your own money. Money you saved without even thinking about it. No bank, no interest, no debt spiral, no rent that disappears into someone else's pocket forever. Singapore didn't give people housing, they gave people savings, and then let people buy their own housing with those savings. They turned a welfare program into a wealth-building machine, and almost nobody noticed it happening. And then they did something no public housing program in history had ever done. After a minimum holding period, you can sell your HDB flat on the open market at full market rate. A government-built flat in Toa Payoh recently sold for 1.73 million Singapore dollars. Let that sit for a moment. Government built $1.73 million. People in Singapore are not just housed, they are sitting on appreciating assets. Here are the numbers that should embarrass every other government on Earth. Singapore home ownership rate, over 90%. United States, 65%. Germany, 47%. Switzerland, one of the wealthiest countries alive, 36%. A couple in Queenstown bought their HDB flat in 2003 for 280,000 Singapore dollars. No bank loan, no interest, CPF covered it. Today, that flat is worth $1.2 million. They are millionaires from a government housing program. But here's the part nobody talks about. LKY didn't build this for economic reasons. He said it himself. A man who owns his home is not a communist. A man with an asset, with something to lose, does not burn down the system that made him. He didn't build a housing program. He built patriots through property deeds, and it worked. Most governments house the poor and call it charity. Singapore housed everyone and called it ownership. One creates dependency, the other creates stakeholders. Every HDB block has a legally mandated ethnic ratio: Chinese, Malay, Indian, enforced by law. Some call it social engineering. LKY would have called it the point. In your country, does the government make you an owner or keep you a tenant? And while you're at it, tell me what your government's housing policy actually looks like. I'm reading every comment.